was thinking, going up there, I was going to say, no, for something completely different, because what we've had so far is quite a high level of what collaboration is and how collaboration might work. In this case, what I'm going to talk to you about is a works package on the Grange-Gorman project, where we tried to do collaboration without any extra contract, without any new framework. We just decided to give it a lash and see what would happen, to use Jack Charlton's phrase. Now, it wasn't quite that informal. We had a very good structure on it. But we used something called the Better Way, which is something from the International Construction Project Management Association. And I'll explain about the project and about the Better Way and show you how it all came together. First of all, the whole thing about collaboration. One of the issues that we saw when we were looking at our projects is that construction is literally running itself apart. And that this is caused by an over-legalisation of the construction process, and that is preventing us all from working together. We're all looking at the product we're all looking at the process, the contractual process, as we go through construction projects, rather than looking at the product of the construction itself. And when we look across the world, we can see the IPD in America, we can see the partnering in the UK, we can see building partnerships, we can see alliance contracting in Australia and Canada and so on. And we were thinking, surely we can do something to try to show that this could work in Ireland. And we needed to do that because there are several new drivers that are emerging across the world, one of which is BIM, and we needed to find ways in which we try to get people to work together. So we wanted to pull together rather than pull apart. We wanted everybody to work together. Everybody would have to keep score of this, everybody would have to gain in some way in this, and there would have to be agreed objectives in order to achieve that. So effectively what we're trying to do is to, rather than get people pulling on opposite ends of the rope, get them all pulling on the same end of the rope, and hopefully we'll pull the contract across the line. In relation to the Better Way comes from an organisation called the International Construction Project Management Association. It's based in Austria, and I'll give you details of how to contact it later on if you wish to do so. But what it does is it judges projects once they are completed on 7 different principles, and it gives an award every year for excellence in construction project management. And the contract which I'm going to talk to you about actually won that award in 2015. It looks at how the people can work together in order to make the contract work. It looks at the processes to try to see how we can foster cooperation as opposed to confrontation. It looks at the contracts themselves and sees if there's some way in which we can make them fairer and simpler in order to make them work. In relation to costs, what it tries to do is to make them more transparent and to make sure that if there is the whole notion of profit, that it's not a bad word, that the private sector has to make a profit. And if you were listening to the radio the other day when Frank Flynn from Cork was on the radio, and he was asked straight out, how much profit does a house builder have to make in this country in order to survive? And he said the minimum is 15%. And yet people will look at that and say, my God, 15%, and all these people that have nothing and whatever, and these rich builders are making 15%. The reality of the situation is that the private sector must make money, and if it doesn't make money, it won't survive. And this idea behind the Better Way was the private sector has to make money. It has to make a profit. Quality, as Ralph spoke about, life cycle, hugely important. It's got to be taken into account. We can't build rubbish projects. We can't build projects that will be handed over and forgotten about once they are finished. And these principles take that into account. But we also have to take into account that when we are building something, there will be challenges. There will be things that go wrong, and there has to be mechanisms whereby we will address these challenges and put them right. Just some of the background on the Grange-Gorman project first. When we started doing the Grange-Gorman project back in 2010, I think it started. Una is sitting down there, she'll be able to tell me probably a bit better. But when DIT started out on this journey, we had 39 different locations scattered around Dublin City. So that's 39 different addresses, 39 different places where we had to have a porter, 39 different DSB bills, 39 different insurances, and so on and so on and so on. So everything was being worked against trying to make us work as one organisation. You know the big signature buildings, you would be aware of them around Dublin, Bolton Street, Kevin Street, Danger Street, and so on. So what we had to try to do is to pull all of the diverse activities of DIT together into one campus so that we could move on together as one organisation. We've got it down to 25 now. but we still have a long, long way to go. But just some of the facts and figures around the Grange Gorman project. It's an enormous project. If you compare it to the Dundurn Shopping Centre, it's nearly 5 times the size and floor area. The DIT portion of that is 270,000 square metres, of which 140,000 is actual academic space, and the remainder is made up of various other things, such as student facilities, which you'll see on the next slide. The final population on site is 25,000, and if you compare that to some of the bigger towns in Ireland, Wexford, Athlone, Mullingar, they're all around that size, slightly smaller actually. So we are talking about moving the size of the town of Wexford into a 73-acre site, 1.5 kilometres away from the city centre in Dublin. So this is not a small undertaking, this is enormous, it's huge. As Malachy was saying, it's one of the biggest projects of its size, or of its type in Europe. So just on the thing itself, the remainder, other than the teaching spaces, student residences, sports facilities, industry innovation park, and of course for the HSE, there's community and residential health services. For the DOES, there's a primary school. And then there's all of the other things that you need in order to make all of those things work together, including an energy centre which provides district heating and other energy for the entire project. The time frame will be the mid-2020s. If you talk to Brian Norton, the president of DIT, he'll say it's 2023. If we had all the money in the world, logistically I don't think we could achieve that. Best of luck to Brian if he thinks we can. But it is very much dependent on finance. And this is the problem that we have at the moment, is that we have a government that is trying to put together all of the different things to make the economy work. And it's prioritising the immediate needs. And while we have a bubble coming through in third level education in relation to the number of people who we will need to educate, it will be another 5 years before it gets on the top of the list for being an absolute priority. So we are now trying to push to say it's going to take us 5 years to build most of this stuff. So let's actually have the problem solved before we have to sit down and work out how to deal with the problem for the next 5 years. Overall cost is an enormous thing. It's 1.5 billion approximately in round figures. Euro millions doesn't even come close to it. The project itself is planned under a strategic development zone. So we have planning permission, outline planning permission for all of the buildings which will be built on the 30 different building plots which exist on the site. We know their outlines, we know their heights. And in doing that, we actually knew then that when we were to plan out the infrastructure for this project, we knew exactly where everything was going to go. We knew exactly what we had to bring to each building. So we knew what we had to do. So again, just looking at the site itself, it's split by the lower Grange Gorman Road. It's actually quite close to the city centre. Most people don't realise how close it is. This area right down here is Bolton Street. King's Inns is here. The Lewis will run up along Downing Street and down through the old CIE works and on up to Cabra, so it's right beside our site. And on the other side we have the North Circular Road, and Phoenix Park is down from that. It's actually very, very well served with public transport, and it's right in the city centre. The project itself that I'm just going to briefly talk to you about was the Site Infrastructure and Public Realm Works Package. It's a civil engineering package. It was to run from November 2013 to August 2014. 26 million euro gross, and the form of contract is the GCCE form of contract. When you look at some of the figures of some of the things that are there, 140 kilometres of pipework underneath 73 acres, 125,000 cubic metres of material to be excavated, 1,000 manholes, and 2.5 cubic metres of attenuation tank storage underneath the pitches to allow us to gather the rainwater and allow that to gradually get back into the Dublin City Council's drainage system. So the figures are enormous, and doing this in this amount of time, in that amount of time, was going to be a huge challenge. And of course the other thing as well is that it had to be done at that time, because we had 1,000 students arriving on site on the 1st of September 2014. So we couldn't be late. There was no way we could be late. The other thing we couldn't move was the 26 million. So you think about this. We are now in a brownfield site. We have 9 months. So anything can happen under the ground that we don't know about. Okay, the GDA did a huge amount of work to try to find out what was under the ground, but a brownfield site will always give you problems. A certain amount of money. We also ran into 5 months of some of the worst rain we ever got in 2014. You think 2016 was bad? Try to remember back to 2014. It was like a swimming pool most of the time. So this was an enormous challenge. So something extra had to be done. We couldn't just hope that the contractor would actually make this work. Just looking underneath the site, this is the sort of thing that had to go in. This is the sort of complications that there were in all the different types of infrastructure that had to go in there. So it was an enormously complex project. Looking at the site itself, we were putting in district heating, we were putting in substations, we were putting in new IT backbone. But the key thing was that it was a backbone. And again, as I said, we can plug and play really from every one of the manholes that we have there. So, all of the project participants, all of these guys had got to come together and try and make this all work. The GDA were leading the charge, the Grange Government Development Agency, and they had all of the various different consultants behind them with the contractors, and the end users were ourselves, DIT, the Health Services Executive and the Department of Education. The way in which this was done, the CEO of the GDA at the time, Michael Hand, organised an initial meeting, and he brought together all the participants in management and supervision of everybody who was involved in the project. So he had all of the decision makers there that day, and then everybody who was there made a public commitment to the project goals. The project goals were, we were going to have the project finished by the 1st of September. We were going to complete for 26 million. We were going to have various different things that would happen along the way, such as power on for the other 3 active construction projects that were happening at the same time. And these were all publicly agreed, and all of the directors of the various different people were standing there in front of their own people and saying, this is what we're going to do. And we're all agreeing this is how we're going to do it. And there were gain sharing systems that were publicly stated, and they were agreed. There were problem solving systems agreed there and then. Whereas if something happened at a particular level and it could be solved at a particular level, that would be fine. If it couldn't, it was escalated to the next level, and the people who were working at the level below got on with what they were doing, and they stopped being distracted by what is going on above them. And that allowed this project to go on like this. As I said, all the decision makers would be based on site, so if something happened, there was somebody on site who would solve the problem. So that's what we started with, brownfield site, or greenfield in some cases, because it had never actually been dug up. And this is what we finished up with. So you can see there was an enormous transformation, even just looking from that aerial photograph, as to what happened in those 9 months. This is where we were in November 2013 when we started off with the old hospital buildings, and this is where we ended up a year later. So you can see a complete and utter transformation. 2 weeks before completion, everybody's sweating really, really hard. You want to have seen it about 24 hours before completion. It didn't look much better than that. But that's the day it opened. That was 8 o'clock in the morning of the 1st of September 2014. And that's our president there, and that is the person who was head of estates in the area. And that's Noel O'Connor, the director, who threw blood, sweat and tears in order to get it through a DIT perspective. So this is what was in the original master plan published in 2008. And as you can see, there are several other buildings there which we're now looking to procure. But this is what we got when we finished the SIPR project. So it's remarkably close. The changes are absolutely minimal, if there are any at all. So the outcome was that we achieved the power on date, which was critical for the other 3 projects that were running on site. It was the 1st of June 2014. We achieved the opening, which was the key thing we wanted. We wanted to open in 2014 with the 1,000 students, and we got that done. We achieved the quality, and it was an excellent quality. First class work that was carried out, and we achieved it within the budget. And the contractor achieved their financial targets, and we all worked, as in GDA and O'Connor Sutton Cronin, all worked to try to ensure that the contractor actually made their targets. And everybody emerged from this with enhanced professional reputations. And when the contractor achieved their targets, some of the things that the contractors did was they came forward with ideas where they said, we've got a problem, but here's a way of solving it, which will actually save you money. And there was a gain sharing system worked out whereby that would work for everybody. So that's how we got it across the line. But, and there's always a but in these things, when we passed 2014 and moved into phase 2, the focus changed. The objectives that we had for the power on and getting the students there and everything, and the 26 million and everything, that suddenly went. And the closing out of this contract became problematic. Not necessarily always because of things that happened on the site, because loads of other things were happening externally as well, which were influencing some of the things that were done. But the parties reverted to the non-collaborative stance, and the agreement on the final account was extremely difficult for everybody. In fact, it ended up in conciliation, which is a shame, because this project actually won an international award for collaboration. But it's astonishing that, when you take away the focus, you take away the objectives, you take away the urgency, we all revert back to form. The lessons that we learned was, you've got to select the right people. A number of people said that already today. If the people are not, have not got the right attitude, this simply doesn't work. And the culture of the partner organisations is crucial as well. They have all got to buy into it right through their organisations. The project goals have got to be very, very clearly stated. And if they are clearly stated and everybody is working towards those project goals and trying to work together on the project goals, then it will work. Trust has got to be built. If something goes wrong, somebody's got to put their hand up and everybody's got to try and solve it. And those problem-solving mechanisms have got to be very, very clear. As I said at the start, you've got to pull together on this, not pull apart. And it's so easy to pull apart on these construction projects. But there really is a need for some sort of a framework or a contract which will actually bring this together to the end. And that's why I'm so heartened to listen to David and for the FSA 1, because if we had that in place, we might have got this all the way across the line. Just on Grange Gorman generally, just to let you know what's going on, these are all the way in which we just illustrate some of these packages. The blue ones are the ones we finished. So people going out there might think, well, there's a couple of things done. There's actually all these projects finished. The green ones are the ones that are currently in construction, and unfortunately there's no DIT one there right now, but there's a huge raft of DIT stuff coming down the line next. These are the ones that are coming in, they're in procurement, they're going to come in line very shortly. And then the other projects, which are in design and early planning, and then the ones right at the bottom, which are future ones, which we know that are there again, which will make up the entire contract. So where we got to in the end was that this better way was achievable through increased collaboration, but it does require formal structure in order to see it through to the end. And as you can see, we even had Indy Kenny out there throwing pieces of soil in the air to celebrate the fact that we got there. But we did, that was actually quite early on in the process, but it was good to see that it got such government support. We just need to have more support in terms of money to finish the thing. In relation to the better way, when these slides go around, there's information there as to how you can actually find out about the better way, but it's very complementary to what is attempted in the FSA 1 contract. I was actually astonished to see how well they line up. Okay, that's it.